Welcome to the Calder Farmstead.
Now the Ice Hogs back out to center in transition. Carlson with Quenneville 2-on-1. Right wing Carlson comes, Quenneville scores!
Here's a chance for Barrett. He scores! Off the face-off! Up it's Eminger. Pull back to Werenski. Has it, shoots one, bounces off a man. 5 seconds left. Werenski, another jam on the shot, turning and firing. They go! They score! They score! Now they catch each other. They both go right over the top. Matching rights to one another. McDermott gets the helmet off of Cassie.
And now, with 9 minutes gone in overtime, the Bears breaking out right side with Bear. Looks like cutting to the net. Bear will score!
And here are your hosts, Cece and Sean.
Hello and greetings from Moncton, Canada. Welcome to the Calder Farmstead Podcast, episode number 103 for Friday, May 27th, 2022. You were hoping for a podcast featuring a breakdown of soybean seed treatments. We are not going to be much help. This is an American Hockey League podcast. My name is Sean O'Brien from StatsTrack and the AHL's only league-wide analytics guy. Thank you for tuning in to the Calder Farmstead. You may have noticed that's not Cece, or rather, that's not Cece. He is not here, and I'm flying mostly solo-ish on this episode. We do have some guests, as well as Cece to bring on a little bit later, but a solid portion of the show is going to be just me taking some veteran solo laps, if you will. As always, feel free to speculate where Cece is. I heard a rumor that he was going to the AEW pay-per-view to challenge Danhausen to a mile-high match, but that may just be rumor. If you're new to hearing what is usually Cece and I talk about hockey, we're going to recap some of the playoff matchups from the past few days for you. We both watch a lot of AHL games and are going to talk about what we see when we watch the film, as well as use some advanced statistics to help us break it down. If that's new to you, you may want to head over to our podcast feed or YouTube channel, wherever you're checking us out from, and check out episode 0. It's a short primer on some of the stats we're going to be talking about, as well as how we view what's important on the ice. So if you're new to some of the more advanced hockey stats terms like PDO or the point shares model, or newer hockey terms like controlled zone entries, go check that out so you better be able to pick up what we're putting down. I promise it's not that nerdy or technical. It's only 20 minutes, and let's be honest, you wasted 20 minutes learning about Sharkcano. They're the dominant species now. You just have to accept it. You'll never get that time back. So next time, why not spend a little more time with us talking hockey? All right, first series that we're going to talk about, as we have to cover all three here, we'll go our usual east to west, Atlantic to Pacific. We're going to start in the Atlantic Division Finals with number 1 Charlotte taking on number 2 Springfield. And as we have kind of had to balance some of the watching of games this round, as they're during weekdays, I can't just sit in front of my computer screen for 9 hours on a Saturday and catch up. I do have a day job. So we brought someone on to help us break down the series. Regular guest on the show, if you will, TJ Chillot, Charlotte Checkers broadcaster. TJ, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Second time. That makes me a regular. I like it.
Yeah. I mean, you get to now say friend of the show, a 2-time friend of the show. So let's get to it right away here. Charlotte down in a 0-2 hole, but you do get to go on back to Charlotte, which I think is a big boost. But let's talk about each game because I feel like they were similar but had different takeaways from them. So I'll tell you what I saw from it in game 1 and hear your thoughts on it. We'll move on to game 2, and then we'll call it a day.
I like it. All
right. So things I stood from our preview, we talked about the important things for Charlotte here were going to be, they needed Joey Decord to have a more consistent series. He was fine in the series against Bridgeport, but I think there were moments in which I was definitely not the most comfortable, and I feel like Checkers fans could agree with that. But the big thing for us in our preview was to pick up the blueprint that Wilkes-Barre Scranton laid down. And you don't usually think of the team that got swept as having a good game plan for taking down Springfield, but they definitely showed chinks in the armor. They were good at pressing forechecks and getting bodies and putting pressure on the Springfield defensemen, who are not, as a group, big puck movers, especially when Callie Rosen and Scott Perunovich are not in town. Currently, it looks like Steve Santini is the only one who I would really say is an efficient puck mover from his own end, whereas guys like Tyler Tucker and Tommy Cross, not so much. And Charlotte did a good job of doing that exact game plan against Bridgeport, and we were hoping to see them kind of carry that on. That's why, I picked Charlotte. I feel like in game one, they at least had good moments in that, but they weren't able to turn those forechecking pressures and offensive zone turnovers that they were getting into offense. It seemed like they would get the puck back off a forecheck, off a dump in, off a rebound, and they wouldn't be able to turn that into a scoring chance or sustainable offense. It seemed like too many times they would get the puck, but then they would have to reset and it wouldn't go well. Let's start there. TJ, what did you see in game one in those aspects?
Well, the first thing, you talk about that Bridgeport series. I looked at that Bridgeport series going in. It's like a boxing match in the sense that whoever was going to be the hardest one to hit, who was ever going to just land the direct shot was going to win that series, and it ended up being Charlotte. And we expected a similar style series going in against Bridgeport, but you had to add in some of the bobs and weaves too, because Springfield has a very good front six. It's not particularly their front six, but the guys like Bitten, and when you talk about Pekka and Sam Annis and all these guys who just have gotten really good this postseason, and we're solid all season long too. You had to pay a little bit more attention to them, whereas you didn't have that offensive firepower with Bridgeport in the series before. So they were two very similar series in that regard. But obviously with Springfield being the second seed, and look, Charlotte and Springfield ended up with the exact same points percentage to end the year. Charlotte won the division by way of the tiebreaker with the most regulation wins. So you knew this series was going to be tight, and it also is one of those situations where Charlotte was 2-4-1-1 during the regular season against Springfield. So you knew this was going to be a very steep uphill climb for Charlotte, even though they're playing the second seed. When you talk about the chances in game number one, I saw a lot of the same things that you saw. The Checkers were trying to execute their game plan, but it just seemed that they were getting pulled out of their game plan by what Springfield was doing. And it's something that Jordy Kinnear preaches a lot offensively and defensively, and just in terms of his game style. And what he wants his guys to do is he wants them to force the other team to work around them. He wants to pull them out of their game plan because of what they're doing. If the Checkers are executing their game plan properly, the other team theoretically is not going to be able to do so. And we didn't see that a lot in the first game. It was really the exact opposite of that. It seemed like Springfield kind of had control, and they only had one extra day rest, so you can't even hang your hat on that and say, oh, well, they finished their series first, so they had a little bit more rest. It was one day. It wasn't a big deal in that regard. For the Checkers, the travel maybe could have, kind of been something there, but they were there in enough time, and I just think it was just a slow start to that series. They were only down 2-0 after 2 periods of play, and it was really that third period where the wheels kind of fell off. And even if that final score was just 3-0, I think that's a better score in regards to talking about how the game was played out. I think 6-0 kind of blows it out of the water in terms of, the competition level. It just really kind of slid down towards the end of the game. Once it was out of reach after that third, fourth goal, after DeCord ended up getting pulled there in the third period, that game was just over. But it was a tough game, and something that surprised me. That was not what I was expecting. I expected a tight 1-goal, 2-goal game with an empty net or something along those lines going into game one, but they bounced back in game two.
They did. I think the other thing too is, our beer league team here got knocked out recently, and we were down at the end of the 2 periods. And I said to guys, we need to start taking chances and, taking risks to create offense, because it doesn't matter if we lose this game 5-0, 6-0, 7-0. It only matters if we lose. So I understand, you're going into the third period down 2-0. You have to take some gambles on offense that normally you wouldn't do, but you need to make offense at this point. And it doesn't matter if you lose 4, 5, 6, 7-0. So I agree with that. That kind of didn't reflect necessarily how the game flow went. And I also think, to their credit, Springfield did a very good job of defending rush chances and kind of recovering from when they did make mistakes. A lot of times I thought that Charlotte had good moments, getting through the neutral zone, getting up the ice, and then they got stood up at the blue line or, right at the top of the circles there by Springfield's defensemen, who I was not expecting to be that fleet of foot to be able to pivot and turn and shut down plays like that. So a good credit to them on that. Also, the other thing from game one that stood out and definitely reared its head in game two is a lot of bad execution on zone exits, or just failing to capitalize on turnovers in their defensive zone by the Checkers defense. Tyler Tucker's goal comes off 3 checkers below the goal line, and some very uncharacteristic, kind of lazy play from Connor Carrick, which it was surprising to me. I actually had to rewind. I was like, no, that is definitely Connor Carrick, because he's been very good through the regular season in my viewings, and seeing the diligence that he puts into his work on Instagram on a regular basis, hearing his podcast, like that is a dude who does everything he can to make sure he is as prepared as humanly possible for every game. So to see him kind of have some bad shifts where it just looked like he wasn't all there is uncommon, but that kind of showed up in game 2, and we'll transition here to game 2 a little bit. I saw a lot of the same themes there. I thought Decord played a better game. I would have liked to see him make the save on Tommy Cross's goal. You have somewhat of a layered screen there that's mostly checkers skaters, it seemed like, unfortunately, that were kind of blocking his path. But from replay angles, it looked like he could see the release. Regardless, you never want to see your guy get beat from 100 feet away. And that's that was kind of what happened there. The other 3 goals, though, I mean, Lyle's one-timer on the power play is one of the most difficult shots you can stop from a high danger perspective. Across railroad, through traffic, right on net in a good location. The other 2 were tipped 5 feet in front of him, and there isn't a goalie in the world that's going to tell you that, like, oh yeah, I reacted to that in time and made the save. If that puck gets tipped there, you're just praying it hits you. There's nothing else you can do. But Charlotte still followed the game plan, I feel like, of forechecking hard against puck moving, or against defensemen who are not good puck movers, and they did a better job of turning that forechecking pressure into scoring chances. Zach Dalby's first goal was off a turnover from pressure on Springfield's defensemen in their own zone. But I still feel like we saw Charlotte make mistakes again in executing zone exits. Connor Carrick, again, kind of showing up here, and I don't mean to slag off on one guy in particular. It was not just him in those moments, but he seemed to be the most guilty. And again, a surprise. I would not have thought that of someone who is as diligent a worker as he is. But the last point I want to make about game 1 and game 2 here for Charlotte is a lot of low danger shots from distance. Like I have gone back and seen some of the shot counters for these games, not just in Charlotte or in Springfield, but Milwaukee as well, where I don't fully trust the shot counters or the shot maps, but having seen some of it myself, a lot of pucks from distance where it looks like Joel Hofer is not being tested. It's basically just a shot right into his glove or right into the logo on his chest. He swallows up any rebound, and that was it. Like a lot of kind of just prayers being thrown at him and hoping some good outcome happens to, fall in the lap of the checkers. And I don't think that's definitely not what they game planned or how they thought of it going. What did you see, and what do you think that they go forward from here, TJ?
Well, going back to the zone exits, when you look back at the checkers, if you were to, take a look back at the entire season on the whole, you'll see that during their longer stretches of winless games or maybe overtime losses or things along those lines, that seems to be the culprit that constantly popped up. And, Connor Carrick is a leader on that D-core. He's a guy that you can count on. He's always in there in just about every situation, from the power play to the penalty kill. He and Matt Kierstead together. But it's not just on the D, of course, because there's plenty of opportunities to chip it up to the half wall. Forwards have to get it out past the blue line, and there was some miscommunications, there was missed assignments there, and it just seemed like they, like you said, they struggled to get out of there. It was almost like they were kind of stuck in quicksand. And when you look at that in terms of quality of chances, they outshot Springfield in both of those games, but the quality of chances were just not really there. And you can tie that to zone exits out of your own defensive end. If you can't get anything out into the neutral zone with speed, you're not getting odd man rushes, you're not slipping through on a break, you're not really testing the goalie on the other side. It seems like the only times the checkers would get in the offensive end, they'd get into the neutral zone, they would win a board battle or a fight down in the corner, which is something they've done really well all series long, is win those loose puck battles, kick it back to the point. But now you're looking at a long range shot from the blue line. Maybe you get some traffic in front. They haven't been doing a great job of that so far in this series, but it started to pick up in that second game, particularly with Alexander True's goal. I mean, that's a guy that's 6'5". He's standing right in front of Hofer, hits off the back of his leg, and boom, into the back of the net. And that's exactly what the checkers need to keep doing. And we talked about that on the broadcast a few times. With Hofer, he's not a guy that you're going to be able to just fling these shots from the wall, these whips and these shots from the point. He's too sound for that. He's too technically tight for that. You got to get the bodies out in front. You have to get into those greasy areas. And when you look at the first 2 goals of the game last night, against Springfield. Dalpy's goals, both of them in tight, below the dots. That was the one thing we said on the broadcast was in order to beat Hofer, you have to win the game below the dots. And they did that in the first half of the game. And then, of course, things changed throughout that the second half of the game. But I do think that defensively, the Checkers need to tighten up a little bit, and they will. I know that they're going to work on this. We saw them tighten up from game 1 to game 2. I mean, it was a clear night and day difference there. There were not nearly as many missed assignments. I don't feel Joey Decord was hung out to dry on any of the goals that he gave up in the loss last night. So the defense certainly came to play last night, but they're going to have to ratchet that up again because the Springfield team certainly knows how to attack. They know how to come in on the rush. They know how to get some great shots, and the Checkers got to work on staying out of the box because that Springfield power play is just really potent right now.
That was our X factor in our preview for the series was special teams. And if I go back to our preview here, it said, Springfield's power play found a lot of success against the Wilkes-Barre-Scranton penalty kill. That was never really going to challenge them much. The Springfield's penalty kill found a lot of success against the Wilkes-Barre-Scranton power play that we had noted several times throughout the season doesn't look like it knows what it's doing. Charlotte's penalty kill against the Sound Tigers power play wasn't, they had a lot of success, but it's also Bridgeport's power play, which has been very underwhelming all year. Their power play, I felt like in the previous round against Bridgeport, didn't necessarily get on the score sheet as often, but they were creating chances and doing good things, and Corey Schneider just managed to stand tall. But coming into this series, we were going to find out which one of these was going to continue on having success and which one was going to struggle. So far, Springfield's been on the right side of that, but that was our X factor. That was the thing that was going to put its thumb on the series and tip it for one side or the other. It's done a good job of tipping it for Springfield so far, but I think Charlotte still has all the requisite pieces to put it back on their side.
When you look back even at the regular season, though, you could kind of just say, oh, well, that first series, they were good on the PK because they were against Bridgeport, and what does their power play have? But, this is a Charlotte Checkers team that was 85% conversion rate during the regular season, top in the division. I think they were second in all of the American Hockey League in terms of PK percentage. It's one of those things where we expected them to continue that, even up against a very potent power play. And just right now, last night's game in particular was hard to find a flow, whether you're talking about a 5-on-5 flow, even when you're talking about just a basic 5-on-4 flow, because the Checkers were forced with a long 3.5-minute 5-on-4 power play against them after a high stick. That's something that you don't want to see in a game. You don't want to see an extended 5-on-3 either. Shorter 5-on-3s, yeah, maybe survive, or just your traditional 5-on-4 power plays against Springfield, yeah, maybe you survive. Springfield didn't have a great night on the power play last night. I think they had 2 power play goals out of 7 opportunities, or 1 out of 6. I can't quite remember, but either way, not a great night, but ultimately those power play goals came at the absolute worst time. That James Neal goal with 5 seconds being the one I'm referring to that ultimately won the game.
Oh, yeah.
And those are the ones that you just have to stop. If you're not put into a situation where you're killing off 7 penalties in a game, one of them very long, a long extended 5-on-3, maybe you're a little bit more tight, maybe you're a little less winded towards the end of the game, the stamina is up, and obviously that also means that Springfield hasn't had that many opportunities to figure out what you're doing on the PK where they can exploit you. So, that was one of the big keys in last night's game, and I think you guys nailed it right on the head in terms of what one of the keys and one of the factors is going to be in this series, and that's still going to ring true here for the next game or games.
Absolutely. Looking forward here, I don't think Charlotte needs to make big sweeping changes. I think it's a lot of just tweaks around the edge, addressing mostly what we talked about here, executing better in the defensive zone under pressure, staying out of the box, because the best way to not let Springfield score on the power play is to not give them any. And I realize there are always going to be, some kind of cost of doing business penalties. You don't try and slash a guy in the face every time you go to lift his stick, but inevitably it's going to happen here and there. But I think the biggest thing for me that needs to be adjusted is they need to start winning the battle at the net fronts. Springfield is doing a much better job of making sure Joey Decord can't see shots clearly. They are absolutely, not just keeping Charlotte away from, Joe Hoffer's eyes, but they are putting, bodies in front of Decord to make sure that he has to, kind of do the bob and weave motion to see where that shot is coming from. And that's something that if that doesn't change, they're going to continue to be battling uphill from that.
One thing that when you talk about no need to make sweeping changes. They already did that, I think, going from game 1 to game 2. You're moving Chase Prisky, a guy that's never played forward here in the American Hockey League, a solid defenseman, a good puck-moving defenseman, moving him up to a forward. You're bringing in John Ludwig, and I think the attempt there was to bring in more of the bigger bodies. Ludwig at 6'1", just over 200. He's a stout defenseman, and I know defensemen aren't in front of the net necessarily, but they just wanted to bring in that size. Logan Hutsko was a healthy scratch. He's a little bit on the smaller side. He's more of your speed demon kind of guy, although they did bring in Luke Henman, who's slightly taller and just a little bit bigger than Logan Hutsko, but they were also without Sarah Noel, who was out of the lineup as well. That's a 6'5" guy who loves to get in front of the net. The Checkers do best when they can put out all of their heavy hitters. Patrick Giles, Alexander True, Sarah Noel, all over 6'5". Those guys, when they're playing at their best, the Checkers are going to play at their best. So I think with, the minor tweaks that they have been making, we're likely to see some more tweaks. And that tends to be head coach Jordy Kinnear's trend anyway. When the team loses, he likes to make minor tweaks. When they lose a lot, he makes major tweaks, as we saw between game 1 and game 2. But I would expect Prisky to possibly be a forward again, because we talked about this too on the broadcast. It allows the Checkers, when they are in the offensive zone, to maintain that attack time, because the Checkers run an offensive attack where their defensemen love to pinch in. We talk about Connor Carrick. He spends a lot of time below the hashes. Prisky, when he's back there on defense, a lot of time below the hashes. So when you have Prisky out there as a forward, he naturally can come back, and you don't have a liability on the blue line because it's not a true forward covering for your pinching defenseman. And I think the effort there was to not only try to get the offensive wheels moving in the right direction, but it's also not at the liability of the defense, because I do think the defense was the liability in game number 1. I don't think, if you looked at all the units together, goaltender, offense, defense, I think defense played the poorest in game number 1. So, and obviously the offense didn't get anything on the board. So how do you fix both of those categories at the same time? Well, moving a defenseman up to a fourth line allows your D to pinch. You don't have the liability on the blue line if something happens, and all of a sudden you might be able to get production out of both of those units at the same time. Now, that's only one line. That can't happen every single shift, so you have to make sure that you're playing responsibly as well, and I think the Checkers played very responsibly on Game 2. I thought they played their plan, because you talked about it earlier, game plans, right? You're going to lose a series based on if you have the right game plan or not, and I think the Checkers have the right game plan, but you're also going to lose a series on whether or not you're executing that game plan properly or not. And right now, I don't think they're at where they want to be, and I think that's why they're down 2-0.
I agree. TJ, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you taking, time out of what is a busy schedule for you, right in the middle of playoffs to give us some great insight there. Good luck in game 3. That'll be Saturday at 6 p.m. in Charlotte. I'm hoping this series goes 5 games. If nothing else, it's been fun so far, and I would like to be entertained for at least 2 more games.
That'd be awesome. I'd love to call 2 more games. We'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks for having me.
All right. Take it easy, TJ. Thank you so much. All right. We are going to head to the break right now. After the break, we will get to Stockton and Colorado. If you're just here for Chicago and Milwaukee, thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get a chance, so you get episodes in a timely fashion. Check us out on social media. Links to all of that and more can be found at our Linktree page at linktr.ee/The Calder Farmstead. We're going to run some ads, pay some bills. We will be right back. Three, 2, and we're back from break, and we are here to talk about the North Division Finals between Rochester and Laval. Unfortunately, it is just me for this side of the show. So if you were hoping for a French guest or maybe someone from the Rochester side of things, it's not. It's just me. So we're going to try and roll here, me taking a solo lap on this series. As this series is now over, Laval won in a sweep. We're going to talk a little bit about kind of the recap of the series as a whole instead of breaking down individual games. And I think the story of this series is fourfold for me. Number 1 is depth. Rochester was able to kind of control the flow play with JJ Peterka or Peyton Krebs on the ice, and there was really little Laval could do to kind of stop them completely. They could contain them as they both play a pretty remarkable 200-foot game and contribute in significant ways in every zone, but Laval really couldn't stop them. But when Peterka and Krebs were on the bench and Brandon Byro, Sean Malone, and Ryan McInnes were matching up against Gabriel Boric, Peter Abandonado, and Danik Martel, or the Schnarr line against the Rauchik line, Laval really got to exploit its team speed to its advantage and just feasted in those kind of bottom line matchups or third line matchups. And that was an instance in which the depth of Laval very much outclassed the depth of Rochester, especially in speed. And that gave Laval a big advantage. Second story of this series for me is goaltending. I thought both teams had stretches of genuinely atrocious defensive play, from Peter Tischke completely losing coverage of Danik Martel at the net front in Game 3 to Tori Dello turning over the puck multiple times in the same shift to Mark Altz getting absolutely undressed by Raphael Harvey-Pinard to Xavier Ouellette getting dominated by Brett Murray at the net front. Both teams had moments of defense that were Captain Picard facepalm worthy. I mean, it's, and we said that going in that, you know, Rochester's defense playing lights out was never going to happen, and that Laval had some struggles on defense leading into this game. But I don't think a lot of the goals Dell gave up were his faults. I mean, how many were tipped or deflected right into the net, right in front of him? But when defense broke down, as it did quite a few times for both sides, Caden Primo had more answers than Aaron Dell. I don't think Aaron Dell did a whole lot wrong, but he didn't do enough right. Primo did. Is that fair? Probably not. But this is the playoffs. As a goaltender, you will not be judged fairly, and you'll probably take more blame than is rightfully yours. But at the end of the day, you need to come up with answers. And Primo came up with a lot more answers than Dell as the series went on. Third big factor for me is the neutral zone. This was our X factor in the series, and I'll take a victory lap here again. We nailed this one. Both sides had stretches where they owned the neutral zone. They were able to get turnovers, force the other side to play dump and chase, or were able to just simply restrict access to it, whether they're making plays at the blue line or forechecking so well that the other team couldn't do anything more than just glassing out into the neutral zone where the other side recovered. Both the Amherst and the Rocket had stretches where that was true of the game that was being played. But Laval had much longer stretches and more frequent stretches of play like that than Rochester did. And when that happened for both sides, the ice looked unfairly tilted to their side. Rochester had good moments doing it, but Laval was by far, I think, the better team in controlling the flow of play through the neutral zone to their advantage. Fourth thing for me this series is Jack Quinn. Quinn was not appearing in this score sheet for a lot of these playoffs. And having seen a lot of him in the postseason, I don't think he was injured. Or if he was, it was a minor kind of injury. I would be shocked to hear he's undergoing ACL repair or a torn labrum or some, injury that we're all, just jaw dropped that he managed to overcome. I don't think that's the case. He looked reasonably healthy for a professional athlete in the postseason of a physical sport, as healthy as you can be in that time frame. But you could tell that not producing was getting to Quinn progressively more and more as the games went on. And by the time the Laval series got underway, he was gripping his stick so tightly, his right hand is going to have the CCM logo imprinted on it till at least July. He just kept trying to force plays that weren't there instead of being patient, playing his game, using his vision. He didn't have a lot of that patience or poise. He was shooting into lanes that were closed and hitting shin pad after shin pad after shin pad. He was making pass attempts to guys that were very clearly covered and just throwing pucks into areas, hoping that it worked for him. He's driving to the net 1-on-3 instead of pulling up and finding a trailer. It was like watching a quarterback starting a drive on his 20-yard line in the second quarter and doing nothing but throwing 80 yards downfield, no matter what the coverage or play call was. I doubt that really sticks into his game through the summer, but wow, was it unhelpful to the Amherst and very helpful to Laval in this series. I think if Jack Quinn was able to, relax, play his game, and not feel the pressure that was on him to perform a little better, this series might have maybe gone to at least a game 4 or game 5, but he was very much still trying to make offense happen, but just because he was so laser focused on results and not process, it seemed he wasn't able to get anything done. And you could see that frustration build, and that, like I said, gripping the stick so tight, he's going to have CCM on his palm until July. But Laval was, I think, pretty handily the better team throughout this entire series. The Admirals had glimpses of being the better team for stretches, but were not able to keep those together. And I think a lot of that, as we said, was depth up front and depth on defense. And that Aaron Dell couldn't come up with, more answers than Caden Primo. They couldn't control the neutral zone and Jack Quinn. But looking forward here for Laval, I think they're going to have their work cut out for them going into the conference finals, no matter who they play. I think it's probably going to be Springfield at this point, given they have a 2-0 advantage. But Charlotte could come back here. But both Springfield and Charlotte play very different styles from each other and very different styles than Syracuse and Rochester. And I think it's very unlikely that Laval will be able to speed through some haphazard defense on its way to a trip to the Calder Cup finals. That's not to say they won't win or that they won't be able to play their game, but I do think both potential opponents present a unique challenge, and one that they haven't seen a lot of, not just in the playoffs, but in the regular season as well. They only played Springfield twice this year, and I believe they split both of those games, and they didn't play Charlotte at all this season. And yes, regular season records don't mean anything for the playoffs, as we've seen already. Henderson had a winning record against Colorado, got swept. Belleville had a winning record against Rochester, got swept. Utica had a winning record against Rochester, I believe. Didn't win that series. Syracuse had a winning record against Laval, I believe. They got swept. A lot of the regular season, series results didn't predict who was going to win the playoff series. But at the same point, there was at least some familiarity with those teams, the players, the systems that, probably gave them some clues, whether on the winning side or the losing side. Whereas Laval is going in pretty blind here to this one. And I've said in other places, I think the North Division winner is going to win the East, regardless of who it was. And I still stand by that. But I think Laval needs to tighten up some of its defensive miscues, as well as I think guys like Raphael Harvey-Pinard and Joel Teasdale are going to have to come up bigger on the score sheet than they have so far. It's worked for them. It's got them to this point, but at some point they're going to need those two guys to put more pucks in the net, or, make more plays that end up in the back of the net. And while he's been lights out so far, I've seen enough of Caden Primo to be cautious here. He's been very well. He's performed well in these playoffs, and I don't think that's a fluke in the way he's gone about making saves. But I've also seen, a good portion of his career to this point, and know that he hasn't always had the most consistent outcomes over stretches. So if this is him turning a corner in his development, that's entirely possible, and we could see him blossom. Or this could be a lot more of what we've seen from him in previous years, where he's looked really good and really hot in spots, and then others he's just been kind of ordinary. And I'm curious to see what comes next for him. I'm cautious in my optimism for Caden Primo going forward. Regardless, congrats to the Laval Rocket. Bon chance in the next round, as your people say. Unfortunately, that is all we have, as we don't have any guests or anyone to kind of play counterbalance to me here. So I understand if this maybe feels a little brief, but that's how I saw the series. And I'm looking forward to Laval. I am secretly rooting for Laval because the atmosphere that they have in that building, the just absolutely amazing, pregame ceremony that they have with the violin and the song, the intro, everything is absolutely magic. I absolutely love it. And everyone I've shown the videos of it to has just been jaw dropped in how great of an environment that looks. And I'm rooting for Laval simply because I want that environment to have the biggest stage it possibly can in the AHL, because I think they've earned that. Regardless, bon chance, Laval. Hoping you go far. We're going to take a break here. After the break, we will get to Chicago and Milwaukee. If you're just here for the Rochester and Laval series, thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you're listening to us from so you get episodes that feature a co-host or more people talking in the future. But also check us out on social media. We have some fun there. All of the links to the places you can listen to us, our social media accounts, and more can be found in our Linktree page at linktr.ee/The Calder Farmstead. We're going to run some ads, pay some bills. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. And we're back, and we are headed over to the West Coast to talk about number 1 Chicago against number 3 Milwaukee. And again, because these games have been at kind of weird times during the week, and I can't just sit down on a Saturday afternoon at 1 o'clock and watch 9 hours of games to catch up. We're going to have to bring on some guests to help us break down this series a little bit. So we went for Chicago Wolves reporter for Canes Country, Sarah Avampato. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. So let's dive right in here. This has been a series that I feel like when we did our series preview of this, we did a real good job at finding the keys to to this series here. For Chicago to win, we said Alex Lyon needed to step up. They needed to stay out of the box, and the big three of Drury, Nason, and Podorowski needed to continue to roll. On the other side, we said if Milwaukee was going to win this series, they needed to start hot and keep Chicago from controlling the game early, and they needed to play boring, low-event, grinding hockey. Our X factor for the series was the Admirals' goaltending. So let's get into games 1 and 2 kind of combined here because they have pretty similar vibes, I feel like. In games 1 and 2, Chicago got on the board first, took leads the best they could at playing a grinding kind of boring low event game 5-on-5 outside of like the first 40 seconds. They at least looked like they tried to execute that game plan. That did not stick around for periods 2 and 3, where after Milwaukee's tying goal in game 2, the Wolves just straight up took over the game, and game 2 was, just the Admirals getting more or less housed. But in games 1 and 2, Chicago also stayed out of the box, didn't give the Admirals a lot of work on the power play. Games 1 and 2 kind of combined the best you can here. Sarah, what did you see from this series in those first 2 games?
I think those first 2 games really were an example of the Wolves at their best when they are playing their game. And it's a hockey cliche for a reason, but it is true. And all the players that I've talked to there, Ryan Warsofsky, the coach, they all basically are like, we have a game plan. We're supposed to stick to it. When we stick to it, we have success. And in those games, they didn't take a ton of penalties. Milwaukee was very clearly trying to be the more physical team. If they can't dominate with the goals, they're going to just try to hit you a whole lot. And the Wolves, for the most part, didn't rise to the bait that Milwaukee was setting. It was until the end of the game when a whole bunch of guys got tossed because there's 2 minutes left and let's not deal with this. It was a lot of Wolves guys just being like, nope, got nothing to do with this. And that helped them because they didn't end up in the box. Milwaukee didn't get a chance really to show off their power play. And the games 1 and 2 really were like, things just escalated very quickly. It just came one goal after another. And Milwaukee just never seemed to get it together enough to have really any sustained pressure whatsoever.
For sure. And I think the X factor that we had for the series being the Admirals goaltending really kind of put its thumb on the scale a lot here. Mm-hmm. And I was really surprised in game 2. I very quietly advocated for Devin Cooley to start game 2 as I don't think to that point in the playoffs, at least, Connor Ingram had looked terribly good. He looked like he just wasn't feeling it those nights. And I mean, that happens, mm-hmm. But I still think, Ingram is clearly the better goaltender overall than Devin Cooley. I'm not trying to imply anything else, but right now, I think Cooley is the better goaltender right now at this very moment in time. And when the rest of the series is going to be do or die, now you're in this weird spot where you played Connor Ingram those first 2 games. He didn't look great in either of them. That last second buzzer beater goal that he gave up to Podorowski was one where I'm like, yeah, that's not going to fly. And a lot of the other goals he gave up weren't necessarily soft, but they were ones where it's like, yeah, buddy, you needed to have that one. you can't be in the playoffs giving up goals in kind of what we've termed Wild West showdowns, where it's I can see you, you can see me.
Right.
There's nobody in between us. There's no other guy you can pass to.
Mhm.
It's just mano a mano, and you're getting rifled once past you from 60 feet away. Like in the playoffs, you can't have that. Like if you see it, you need to be able to stop it. 98% of the time, that hasn't been Connor Ingram, whereas it has been Devin Cooley to everyone's surprise. But I thought, if you go to Cooley in game 2, it's a back-to-back. Ingram's one of the most overworked goaltenders in the league. He didn't look great in the, game before that or the 2 before that in Manitoba. There's at least a lot of reasons you can give of why you're starting Devin Cooley in this game without being like, this is starting Devin Cooley and not benching Connor Ingram.
Right.
Whereas in game, like if Ingram loses game 2 in bad fashion, then it's like, no, now we have to bench, probably our most talented goalie for a literal do or die game. And the rest of the games this series are going to be do or die. What do you do here? But they seemed to figure it out in game 3. So let's kind of transition here to talk about game 3. Paul Dorowski, Nason, and Drury have been incredible this series. I thought that they did everything they could to get onto the score sheet in game 3, but our X factor of Admirals goaltending, specifically Devin Cooley, put on a show.
Yeah. Devin Cooley was just like phenomenal. Like this team got goalied basically. Wolves had, I think, 49 shots on goal was the final score. Yeah. 49 shots. Cooley looked fantastic. I would say that, I don't know how many of those shots were very high danger. There was a lot of stuff going right into his chest, right into his glove. And they weren't making him work too hard, for a team that put 49 shots on a goaltender. I was like, I haven't seen Devin Cooley have to stand on his head, but at the end of the day, he stopped all those shots. He got limited action in games 1 and 2 after they pulled Ingram, and did his best, but by then the damage was already done. So I wasn't too surprised to see Devin Cooley in for game 3. Now, like you said, though, now they have to run with him and, hope that he continues, from Milwaukee's perspective, continues to play like that for the rest of the series and steal it. This game was one where from the very start, Milwaukee looked so much more focused, so much more controlled than they did in Chicago. They were excelling at blocking shots, getting in passing lanes. A lot of Wolves' chances weren't even connecting because Milwaukee was doing a really good job breaking stuff up. It looked like a totally different Milwaukee Admirals team. It looked like the team that had second best power play in the league this year. They looked like the team that was dominant at times rather than the team that struggled, I think, out of the gate. It's been very much a tale of 2 Admirals, I think, this year. And game 3 was the good ones. Games 1 and 2 were the mediocre ones. But from the Wolves' perspective, I feel like if you played this game 5 times, 3 of those times the Wolves might win it. It was a very coin toss kind of game, but the Wolves just couldn't get anything particularly dangerous going. And asking Ryan Warsofsky about it after the game, he's basically like, well, our goal is to score more goals. And I was like, all right, you got that one. That is a true statement.
And having seen a lot of Milwaukee this year, I think they were one of the teams we ended up covering the most, not out of any kind of bias, I don't think, more of just they happened to fit our schedule a bunch. So they got slotted in. And yeah, I can confirm they have done a very good job of going on streaks where they look like the worst team in the league. And then others were like, yeah, nobody's beating this squad tonight. It's right. They have been hot and cold, up and down all season long. And that's why we said one of our keys to the series for Chicago was not to take penalties, because the only thing that has persisted the entire Milwaukee Admirals season that's worked, even when everything else is broken and discarded, is the power play. For some reason, they have managed to have one of the top power plays in the league throughout. And I understand in the first round, it didn't look that hot, but it was one of those, I'm like, I don't believe that that's going to be the case. Like even in the first round, they were still hitting 18.8%, which ain't too shabby. And it seemed like in game 3 too, that was another big kind of storyline, is the Wolves had, I want to say 7 penalties through the first 2 games. And then they had 7 last night in Milwaukee. They messed around. They found out that was also don't send Milwaukee to the power play, because when you give someone like Rocco Grimaldi and Cody Glass time and space, they will do bad things to you in the offensive zone. And that was certainly part of it.
Yeah, when I learned Grimaldi was back, because I hadn't really paid attention to the Admirals for their round against Manitoba, and then I was like, oh no, because he is a known figure. Cody Glass is a known. Cody Glass was a Wolf for a little over a season. He's a known quantity to Wolves fans. It was just one of those things where the Wolves and the Admirals played, I think, 14 times in the regular season, and talk about they look like the worst team or the best team. They looked like the worst team in the league for 10 of those 14 games. And the 4 that the Wolves lost were, not, there weren't particularly any blowouts from the, Wolves losing. So I think they came in with a lot of confidence, and now they're like, oh, this is the Milwaukee that got here. And there's a lot of respect in the room for the team. Everyone, when you talk to them, they're like, yeah, this is a good hockey team. They're here for a reason. We're not just gonna, we know this isn't going to be a walk in the park through this series, no matter how good we were against them in the regular season.
And I think too, it's a very different team that's when they play in Milwaukee. Like I understand that building was not, packed to the brim and raucous, but there is something to be said for them at home. And I think that also made a big difference too. I mean, it was surprising to me as I was running the numbers for our daily updates, which did not get done today, but there aren't any games today, so I feel okay about that. But when I was running daily updates last night, and I saw that Milwaukee was like a tiny, tiny favorite at home, and I'm like, yeah, this is not going to be as widespread a series as I think it looked in Chicago, and I still think in those games in Chicago, like Milwaukee had moments, stretches where you could see good bones, good underlying structure there. It's just they couldn't put it together for anything more than a 5-minute stretch here and there.
Yeah. And in games 1 and 2, talking with Ryan Wasowski afterwards, he was like, listen, the score is a blowout, but he's like, these games are much closer than it looks from that number. And he could point out many times where he was like, yeah, I didn't like the way that my team was playing. And all because they came away with a big win doesn't mean that there weren't things to improve on, or there weren't things that could be troubling. And we saw that in game 3 of everything started going in the Admirals' direction, and then suddenly, here the Wolves are chasing for the first time all series.
Yeah, and it was, and I think I saw some of that too in games 1 and 2, where like you take away a couple of the goals that were maybe not like that Podorowski one to end the second period. It's like, well, okay, let's take that one off the board. Kind of like there was a goal that Stockton scored in game 1 against Colorado. It was a backhand from literally like the Zamboni entrance at the goal line. It's like, yeah, okay. Like it goes on the board. We all acknowledge it happened, but like, let's not talk about that as a repeatable goal. That's a 1 in 1,000 shots. Kind of like the one that beat Mike Smith from you shouldn't be taking those shots. Those are shots that are 1 in 1,000 or worse. But like outside of a couple of those, like that series, I think you're right that the score definitely overshadowed what was actually happening on the ice. Like, the Wolves still were the better team for the first 2 games, but it was definitely not by a factor of 5 goals.
Right.
And I think that's something that reality kind of caught up a little bit in game 3, and we saw. Looking forward here, though, I don't think either side needs to make big adjustments. I would be surprised unless Devin Cooley gets absolutely housed in game 4 here. Well, if Devin Cooley gets housed in game 4, it doesn't matter. Sorry, there is no game 5.
He's going home.
I would be surprised to see Connor Ingram back in net for Milwaukee in any capacity, unless like something happens to Devin Cooley. I'm also still really shocked that Milwaukee has decided that Askarov is going to not even dress for these games. Like, I mean, this is a goaltender who has had a mountain of hype to come with him since getting picked at a wild place for me in the first round. They bring him over to North America, and I thought that first series when Ingram went to Nashville, I'm like, here we go. The legend of Askarov is about to be born.
Right.
And here we are, 7 games later, 8 games later, and I'm like, they're not even putting him on the bench. Like, why did you drag him from Europe and sign him
to hang out?
To just, see how good the popcorn in each arena is. Like, I mean, if that's really your plan, then sure. But Devin Cooley has kind of made that argument for them of like, yeah, but Devin Cooley played lights out. So I don't know. Like I could see a world where you could see Askarov get back in, but not before Ingram. Like I'm still really shocked about that. I don't know what they're doing there, but whatever. It's their franchise goaltender they're playing.
Right. You know, I mean, there could have been a really cool narrative there of, you know, of course, Kochetkov up in the NHL because of Carolina's many goalie injuries, but you could have had a very cool, you know, dueling former KHL goalies coming over at the end of the season. Like it would have been a really cool, you know, like storyline.
That would have been a lot of fun too.
Yeah. Instead, one is on the bench or one is, you know, in the locker room and the other one's also in the locker room, but in the NHL.
Yeah. And I mean, it seemed, I think I saw something yesterday that Freddie Anderson was at least was practicing. So there is a chance in the future too, that we have some kind of weird, you know, if Kochetkov goes back to Chicago, it's like, okay, the Lions done really good. What are we, are we doing rock, paper, scissors for this in the pregame? Like that's going to be an interesting one, but yeah, that would have been a much more fun storyline for the goaltending is if we got a KHL showdown from guys who came over with a mountain of hype from the KHL. But looking forward, I think the only thing that I would say for Chicago that they need to do to kind of tip the scales and finish this out is the same thing we've been saying the whole time. Don't take penalties. And I saw some questionable officiating in the bits and pieces I saw in Game 3, as I did in other places in the league, but nothing that was terribly egregious.
Right.
So and again, you're never going to take, well, I shouldn't say never. You're unlikely to take 0 penalties. Is sometimes you go to make a poke check and a guy steps on your stick and falls.
Yeah, you're done. Yeah.
You didn't mean to do that, but that is still, you're still going to get called for tripping and the like. But like, as long as they're not doing the like, oh, hey, I'm just going to two-hand this guy in the back for literally no reason.
Right. Like, oh, I didn't see it.
Yeah. And I mean, we talked about this earlier in the season too, that the Wolves were the least penalized team in the AHL. Like their margin for power plays or penalties drawn versus penalties taken was the biggest in the AHL by a lot. And we kind of wondered out loud if like in the offseason, the Wolves were recruiting guys that didn't get penalized a lot that also fit what they were looking to do because none of the guys on the team outside of Kyle Marino, who I feel like we all knew was going to be in triple digits this year.
That's his job.
that's what he does.
Yeah.
Agree or disagree with having that guy on your team. That is what he does. But like everyone else, like Stefan Nason didn't take that many penalties, but that's not abnormal for him. A lot of the other guys that they brought in, it's like they're, you know, they do their job. They're effective forwards, but they don't take a lot of penalties.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, their general manager when we had him on to accept our Mea Culpa award about that, and we didn't get to it. So I'll be curious to see that in the offseason. But I think the Wolves probably go back to having a little bit more discipline, or if nothing else, just, you know, not having the rotten luck of penalties that they did in that game.
Yeah,
but
they've been very good at making like they've been like I feel like any time this season where they've had, you know, a disappointing loss, the next game, you know, there are very few times this season where they have lost consecutive games. Or, you know, more than 2 in a row. So, you know, they've done a really good job of bouncing back and correcting the mistakes that they made that got them into trouble in the first place. And yeah, there's a reason they're one of the lowest penalized teams. Ryan Wasowski talks, I feel like every time I talk to him, he talks about discipline and how his team, he needs them to play a certain way. And, you know, they have heart, you can have passion. He talks about Stefan Nason all the time as an example of this, this is a guy like heart on his sleeve kind of player. And he's like, yeah, sometimes he takes it too far. And we know that, and we're working on it. And, you know, but he's like, yeah, we need to play on the right side of the line and not put ourselves in those situations to be down a man.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the Chicago staff was part of our, you know, was a finalist for our best coaching staff award for a reason. They've done a very good job of making adjustments and making the best of what they've had. I mean, at the beginning of the season, we all knew Podorowski was going to be good. We didn't know he was going to be 100 points good.
Right.
We knew he was going to be, you know, an impact player. I don't think any of us saw, you know, Stefan Nason or Josh Levo having this level of impact. And that's a credit to the Wolves staff, because this is there was nothing about their game or their season from an eye test or an analytics perspective that says, no, this is a mirage. Like, it's not like
Right.
Stefan Noesen shot 38% this year.
Right.
And it's like,
Right.
you can't hold on to that.
Right. Yeah.
They all did it in what seemed like a very sustainable way.
Mhm.
On Milwaukee's side, one of the things, like you said with Rocco Grimaldi, where it's like when he came back and you're like, oh, that's
Yeah.
not good.
Yeah.
There were definitely some moments watching, I think it was game 2. I watched some of game 2 this afternoon. And there are moments in which I could point at Rocco Grimaldi and be like, that's a guy who has played a bunch of games in the AHL, has multiple double-digit goal seasons in the NHL, rather. And that's the reason why, because he's a dude who's tiny and he can still put his shoulder down and drive to the net and get to the inside.
Yeah.
And that's what separates him from a lot of other guys that are really talented that are in his size range that don't make it, because they can't do that and he can.
Yeah.
Why Nashville has chosen to stash him in Milwaukee this season is a decision that is beyond me. I have absolute no concept for why that is the way it is. But Rocco Grimaldi somehow managed to get back healthy into this game by what I'm just assuming are nanobots. And he has been the impact player that he looked like when he was last time. Any thoughts going forward here, Sarah, before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, just going forward, you said, like, I don't anticipate either side making a lot of changes. I would expect the Wolves to have a very nice, serious discussion about, behaving themselves and watching where they're putting their sticks and everything. But, I wouldn't expect, except for, minor lineup changes, swapping out someone on the fourth line or something. I wouldn't expect, them to do much different personnel wise. And they're just going to try to play a much stronger game than they played and hopefully figure out the secret to Devin Cooley.
One decision that they've made repeatedly in roster changes that has been baffling to me is I'm really surprised we haven't seen Tarmo Reunanen in any of these games. I mean, like I know it's, a thing from practice, but I'm pretty sure he was the dude that broke the back glass with a slap shot. Like, usually you see that happen. You're like, okay, maybe we put that guy in the lineup, but like he's someone who, when he was with Hartford, like was useful and was a good puck moving defenseman. And that's not to say that, the Wolves have a bunch of pylons back on the back end, but like to not see him get in at all has been surprising. And in talking with you on Twitter, you said there hasn't been any injury to report from him. It's just straight up in, he hasn't gotten in. And I've been surprised by that. I don't think that that's going to be a change that happens. Just, I don't think that if it hasn't happened yet, I don't think it's going to, unless someone gets hurt. But I think if it were me in charge, that would be someone I'd be looking to get into the mix, if nothing else, just to see if he brings something a little different.
Right. Yeah. And there very well could be an injury and it's playoffs and no one's talking, but they have been, to their credit, fairly transparent whenever someone's been hurt. And I ask about them, I usually get an answer of, he won't be back for a little while. They don't usually get more specific than that, but it is curious. I feel like he was in and out too during the regular season. So I don't know if there's just something that isn't meshing with him and, where they're trying to play him in the lineup. But he definitely, once he was traded, there wasn't a regular fixture. And so it could just be we have this guy, but we don't know what to do with him. But, I could see, if game 4 does not go the Wolves' way, I could see some kind of like last minute adjustments. But obviously I think they're going to be hoping that that doesn't happen.
Absolutely. All right, Sarah, before I send you out here, where can people find your work on the internet?
So you can find me on Twitter at Write Said Sarah. It's WRITE Said Sarah with an H. Canes Country is available at canescountry.com. Also on Twitter at Canes Country if you want to follow along there. Obviously geared towards Carolina Hurricanes, but you do get to hear from me on a at least weekly basis on what's going on with the Wolves on their site.
All right, perfect. Sarah, thank you so much for your time today. Look forward to seeing more from you.
Glad to be here. Thanks a lot.
All right, take it easy. All right, we're going to head to the break right now. After the break, we will get to Stockton and Colorado. If you're just here for Chicago and Milwaukee, thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get a chance so you get episodes in a timely fashion. Check us out on social media. Links to all of that and more can be found at our Linktree page at linktr.ee/The Calder Farmstead. We're going to run some ads, pay some bills. We will be right back. Stay tuned. Three, two. And we're back from break, and we're going to talk about the West Coast, the best coast, but we need to bring a friend on here to help us talk about what's happened in this Stockton, Colorado series so far. You may know him. He's a regular on the show. He is my usual co-host, actually CC Hawkley. CC, welcome to the Calder Farmstead podcast. You should be familiar with, the way things are here.
I think I've got a general concept of how, the show runs and etc. So I'll do my best to adapt and thrive.
There we go. Especially as you and I are in opposite spots now, which is always weird.
Yeah,
but
a little different.
That's the nature of bringing guests on. Sometimes you have to kind of, just adjust on the fly, but it's good.
That's very true. Good point.
Speaking of adjusting on the fly, Stockton and Colorado, some takeaways here. I'm going to, kind of tee you up a little bit and hear your thoughts. 3 things that stuck out to me about watching, the bits and pieces of this series that I've caught so far. One of the bad things about these being weekday games versus weekend games is I don't have the whole day to watch them. So I can't just wake up Saturday morning and, start at 9 a.m. and just keep going until 10 p.m. to get all the games in. I have to kind of watch on the fly. So bits and pieces here, but here's some of the things I've noticed. Number 1, Colorado's taken a lot of bad penalties. Number 2, Stockton has done a very good job of keeping a lid on the Eagles in the neutral zone. Number 3, a lot of defensive miscues on the part of Colorado that are very uncharacteristic of them. So let's start at the top here. What have you seen in Colorado taking penalties? Do you agree that they've taken a bunch of bad ones, or what's your take on this?
I mean, yeah, I agree with you 100%. It's been awful. I mean, the Eagles had 6 penalties against in game 1, and they had 4 penalties against in game 2. And, I understand game 1. The Eagles were transitioning from really having to play a physical style of play against both Henderson and Ontario. And with Ontario, I feel like the Eagles kind of baited the rain into playing a little bit more of a rougher style than they were used to. I think that they've kind of done that all year, or at least the last half of the year. But coming into Stockton, it's like we talked a little bit about it off camera, but Stockton has that balance of speed and physicality. And so the Eagles, were tilted. The needle was tilted more towards physicality for sure. And so, they were drawing penalties left and right in game 1, and Stockton only got 1 power play goal out of the 5 that they had in that first game. But the second game, it was a 1-goal game for the last half of it. And the Eagles, drawn stupid penalties, especially in the last 3 minutes, Jason Megna, accruing that tripping penalty. And you basically negate any possibility of pulling a Noonan out of the net and getting a 6-on-5 opportunity to tie the game and at least push it to overtime. I mean, the Eagles it was a lot more apparent in game 2 because it was such a close game, but the Eagles have been undisciplined in the first 2 games, and it's biting them in the butt, something fierce.
And we're going to jump to point 3 over point 2 here because they kind of dovetail together with them taking a lot of penalties.
Right.
That they've had a lot of defensive miscues, especially on the penalty kill, where one of the plays I've noticed Stockton doing a lot is running down the wall, getting the rover to chase them, and then throwing it back up high. That's how they scored one of the second goal of the game in game 1, and had a number of looks doing the exact same thing in game 2. Because the guy that's supposed to replace him as the rover is not getting there in time. And more interestingly, it looks like the Eagles are willing to let that guy shoot, as Jason Megna and I want to say Martin Kaut both were playing the pass and just letting that high guy at the point walk right in, wind up and fire. And I don't know if that's a conscious choice by, their penalty kill and that's what they're being instructed to do. I kind of understand it in the sense of like, I'm willing to let guys wind up and fire if my goalie has clean, vision and just basically make a save from 70 feet out. But that's the other problem their penalty kill is running into is they're not giving Justus Anunen clean lines of vision. He's having, a lot of screens in front of him. And that takes what should be a low danger chance into a medium to high danger chance. What are your thoughts on the PK so far, CC?
I mean, they definitely implemented that power kill mentality. They had a fair number of shorthanded chances in game 2. Like they generated a good number of shorthanded chances. But like you said, back on the other side of things, their strategy, it left Noonan open for a lot of high danger chances. And especially, okay, let's go back to that second goal. The first goal, Kirkland just put it on net from the goal line.
Yeah, that one can't go in.
No, can't. Yeah. Anunen's got to hug that post and make sure that puck does not go in, because Kirkland just shot it on the net. It was a bad shot. It wasn't a good shot, but apparently, lob it on net, things can happen. And Anunen, he had a lapse on that one. So that was the first goal. The second goal was the power play goal. And you were right. So they got it to Welinski up on the point, and they just let him take that shot through traffic. And Welinski scored. And that, I mean, granted, 2, 3, 4, they were all back-breaking goals the further along you went. I mean, they were just chopping away at the confidence of the Colorado Eagles. But that Welinski goal, that power play goal, I mean, the penalty kill has been the Eagles' calling card this postseason. They have allowed one power play goal coming into this series out of 5 games played, and that was that last one against Ontario on the road. They allow another one on Monday night. They allow another one on Tuesday night. The only goal of the game, once again, scored on the power play. So, again, loving what the Eagles are doing with the power kill, being aggressive and putting the puck in their zone when they're shorthanded. But when your strategy also involves you leaving your goalie hanging out to dry like they did with the Noonan, I'm really surprised they didn't pot 1 or 2 more power play goals.
Yeah, and I think sorry, I'll let you finish. Go ahead.
No, that was it.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem is they're not clearing traffic in front. Like, if you're going to let guys shoot from that far, you need to give your goalie clear vision, because if you can't see the shot coming, it doesn't matter. I can put shots in from the point on the net where if a goalie can't see it, it's probably going to go in. Right. And I am not good at hockey. So that's something that they need to work on, boxing guys out in front. And I understand that that's a little more challenging on the power play, because then you're occupying a guy on a guy, and then you're still playing 4-on-3, and then, so on and so forth. But that's something that they're going to need to fix. Second point that we started with, but now third point here. Stockton has done an amazing job here of keeping a lid on the Eagles in the neutral zone. Like, the Eagles are a team that wants to go real fast north-south and fly through the neutral zone, especially too. They want defensemen to jump into the rush. They want to basically put 4 guys through the neutral zone. Not quite what the flying V was for the Mighty Ducks, but what that flying V, I think, was supposed to do in concept is give you, short support options coming through the neutral zone and be able to outman, the defense at any moment with your forecheck. And I think that's kind of what Colorado does with, bringing defensemen along the weak side to rush through the neutral zone so they can play a numbers game through the neutral zone. And Stockton has said, no, sir. They have done a fantastic job of forechecking and keeping the Eagles from getting to really fly through the neutral zone like that with numbers. And it's been genuinely impressive. CC, your thoughts on it?
The Eagles have been just completely, their wings have been clipped. To stick with the Bergen analogy, the wings have been clipped for the Eagles, because to fly through that neutral zone, to press into the opponent's end, and to try and set up the play to get other guys, line changes off and everything. That's been, again, another calling card of the Eagles that Stockton has stifled. And this was an interesting tidbit at the end of game 1. The Eagles, regular season or not, had not been shut out, period, since November of 2019.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they had not been shut out. And now they've been shut out twice with this potent scoring offense that averaged 6 goals a game in the first 2 rounds. Granted, when you put up 10 against someone, it's going to skew the mean a little bit.
Fair, very fair. But
they also put up 5 against Henderson twice. Yeah. So, and then the 10-goal game against Ontario. The Eagles were clicking on all cylinders, and Stockton has made the neutral zone sludge, for Colorado. They are methodical, both on the offensive side of the puck and the defensive side of the puck. And let's not forget the third side of the puck, which is AHL goaltender of the year, Dustin Wolf, has played out of his mind. Well, I shouldn't say that. He's making, when he's under pressure, he was under a lot more pressure in game 2 than he was in game 1.
Yeah.
And he made he kept his head when things got a little chaotic for a number of times during game number 2. Eagles played head and shoulders a ton better in game number 2, both on the offensive and the defensive side of the puck. But Stockton, after Colorado was coming at him in the first period of game 2, in the second period, Stockton flipped the script and made it look like game 1 all over again for a good portion of that middle regulation frame. And, it's like the Eagles, they tried their damnedest to get the puck by Wolf. But you combine what Stockton is doing in the neutral zone, the pressure that they create, and the systems that they set up when they get into the Colorado zone with the outstanding goaltender that's in net for you, and not really giving him much of a challenge in game one, giving him more of a challenge in game two, probably, I don't know if you'd put a percentage to it, but, I'd say, yeah, it was probably 2 times more of a challenge for Dustin Wolf in game one or in game two than it was in game one. So you combine all those factors, and Stockton they've dominated the Eagles. And again, the Eagles made those slight adjustments. You take the bruiser Dalton Smith out, you take the rookie Oscar Olausen out, and you put in Cal Burke, you put in Sampo Ranta, you generate a little more offense on the fourth line than kind of more of a bruising fourth line that they had in game one. And it worked. It worked well. But Stockton is still going to Stockton. And if you don't get that puck, if you hit the post or you get a puck, there's a scramble for the puck and Wolf, does his Wolf thing and, flails and pins the puck against his pad. I'm rambling, but you get the idea. Stockton has methodically and surgically. Those are, 2 great adjectives that describe what they're doing against the Colorado Eagles. They are shutting them down and shutting them out 2 times in a row.
And I think the most impressive thing is they're not just turning the neutral zone to sludge, keeping them from flying through and forcing turnovers. They're then immediately flipping those turnovers into scoring chances.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The 2-on-1 goal that they scored, I don't remember who it was. As soon as McDonald went down to try and block the pass, I'm like, that's going in the net.
Yeah.
Like I knew as soon as he left his feet, that was going in the net.
Mm-hmm.
Like he dropped way too, you should never drop to your, I see players do it all the time. Don't ever do that. Very you were basically just saying, I would like this guy to have patience as I go sliding by uselessly.
He dropped down way too soon and just was like,
well, he dropped down too soon and he didn't even get to do the slide portion of it. He didn't have the momentum going backward. And Stockton, and forgive me, I don't remember who made the assist or the goal, but you know the play I'm talking about.
I do. Yep.
He basically was just all right, cool. I'm going to keep skating 2 more strides. And then there's literally nothing between me and the other, my other forward here. And I'm just going to tap in the passing to put it home. And that was off of a tie-up that they got in the neutral zone where they shut down a breakout from Colorado. They caught Jordan Gross up a little high and he couldn't recover in time. And McDonald made a terrible decision to slide there. But they've been not just shutting it down, they've been counterattacking off of it as well. And that's been, it really has been our, Calder Farmstead 21-22 coaching staff of the year, flexing its coaching muscles because Mitch Love and company have outcoached Greg Cronin and company to this point. And we'll see what happens in game 3, but Cronin, I don't think can afford to make small decisions. I think, sitting Smith and Olesen for Burke and Ranta is a good choice given that, we need to mix things up and maybe get some more offense from the bottom lines. But I think he needs to start making bigger adjustments for game 3 because we're getting to, if they don't come out, hot in game 3 and, at least win the first period, your back is against the wall here and your season is on the line. I think it's time to be looking at bigger things that they can do here. And if that's, trying to tweak the breakouts that have been getting shut down, trying to tweak the penalty kill to adjust more to what Stockton's doing. The ball is right now in Greg Cronin's court and he needs to make moves and make decisions and make changes because the way things are going right now, Stockton is cruising and it's impressive to watch when you're on this side of it, but from the Colorado side, I could definitely see the frustration.
It was amazing to me. I thought it was going to be a whole lot closer than 5-0 when Dylan Sekura was announced to be back in the lineup. I'm like, great. He's going to be on that top line with, Kiefer Sherwood and Mikhail Maltsev taking faceoffs. And that top line is going to be chugging. That top line's they're going to pot 1, 2, 3 goals on that top line this game. Nothing. And yeah. And those 3 games that Sekura missed against Ontario, it felt like a more complete effort. Bowers was doing great. Martin Cow was doing great. and now you sit Bowers and you bring back Cal Burke because Cal Burke's a great hockey player. But Cronin and his staff are going to have to make some big adjustments coming into game 3.
And even more so, like Stockton's missing guys that are important. Valimaki hasn't played in this series. Neither has Glenn Gauden.
No.
Those are not, nothing pieces on Stockton too. And they're a roster that's already missing, missing in the sense that he's been gone most of the season in Adam Ruzicka, but like he's not coming back. They've had a couple other guys that, you would want to see. Oh my God, I can't think of his name all of a sudden, even though I'm like almost looking right at it.
Up in Calgary?
No, he's in Stockton, but he's just started playing well this series. Matthew Phillips. Like Phillips hadn't looked too terribly alive in the series against Bakersfield, but has started to find his game in this one. It's been a surprising effort given the roster. Like I would have thought no Glenn Gauden, no Valimaki. It's like, oh, Colorado takes game 2. Like they'll bounce back with that. They'll make, and they haven't. It really has been Mitch Love just squeezing every drop of life out of this team that they have to give in order to put on shows. Like,
yeah, here I was thinking Colorado had the depth.
I mean,
they do, but Stockton's looking like Kirkland, 3 goals in 2 games.
Oh, okay. I mean, the one of those should not have been a goal. Like, don't get me wrong. It went in, it counts. It does. But like that backhand from literally like the Zamboni entrance, that can't go in. I don't like, I almost fault him for taking that shot other than it went in. Like you shouldn't be taking shots like that. That's
no, it's,
but like like this is a series where it feels like a lot should not be going Stockton's way. And they're just finding ways to win. And it's impressive. And like I said, this is why they were our coaching staff of the year. They have managed to, whenever the game throws them curveballs. Oh, no Glenn Gauden, no Valimaki. You haven't had Adam Ruzicka since like Christmas, I think, and they've still just found answers at every turn for problems that would bog down a very good staff and a very good team. And they're just like, nah, we'll pretend like it didn't even happen, and it was our plan the whole time. Like it's been really impressive to see Stockton continue to just run a very efficient team. And again, I think Mitch Love is in company or out coaching Greg Cronin. He's going to have to come up with answers.
If it's going to be Stockton and Chicago, which is kind of the writing on the wall right now with both of their opponents down 2-0 in the divisional finals. If it's going to be those two in the Western Conference final, that's going to be appointment TV right there. Cause it's going to be really stinking good. And I couldn't tell you half a dozen, 6 of the other who's going to make it to the Calder Cup final if those two are going to grace the Western Conference finals.
Well, I mean, as of right now, Milwaukee is winning 1-0 in the second period. Spoiler, we do not record these in order. But for those listening at home, but it's, if that's going to be what it is, and it's going to be Chicago and Stockton, then, well, I mean, I'm happy. That's going to be fun. I really didn't think that was going to be what it was. I thought Colorado was just going to have too many horses for this, but
here we are.
I mean, here we are. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right, CC, any closing thoughts on what Colorado needs to, do in game 3, 4, and 5? I mean, all of them are at home in Loveland, so at least they got that going for them, which is nice.
Right.
But
put the puck in the damn net. I mean, it's a lot easier said than done against a suffocating, Stockton defense there in the neutral zone. But man, figure it out. Figure out a scheme to get that puck at least into the offensive zone and to give your guys a chance to cycle it around and to get some quality shots on net. Game 2 was much, much better for quality shots. The shots that they did get on net, though, were outside of home plate for a lot of the time.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, the quality went up, which is good. They weren't just throwing pucks on net like in game 1, hoping, oh God, I hope one of these go in.
Yeah.
But yeah, at least the quality was good. So I'd say get the puck into home plate, get some higher quality shots. I mean, you were really low in game 1. You're mediocre in game 2. Get them up here, get in the home plate area, get down and dirty. Like I said, get Magna in front of the net. He thrives there, and they haven't been doing it. He hasn't been set up in front of the net, be it on the power play or otherwise, but he just has a penchant to get there and to jockey for position and to give the guys a chance to give him a chance for a deflection, to give guys a chance to, get a shot on net with the goalie screen, but it's not happening. So do that, and that'll help. Easy for me to say.
I mean, yeah, I think the big thing for me is going to be execution here. They've looked sloppy at times. Like they've made it a little too easy for Stockton to lock them down at times. And yes, not taking anything away from what Stockton has accomplished here, but there have definitely been moments in their execution where they've given Stockton some gifts, given them some favors, doing, kind of the just, bad passes through the neutral zone, not receiving passes well, getting caught up ice when they should have known better, those kind of moments. But
yeah, stick to stick passing was non-existent in game one. They couldn't complete a clean pass to save their lives. So yeah. So now we're looking forward. Go ahead.
No, yeah, let's look forward. Cece, where do both of these teams, they're going to play some more games. Tell me, give me the rundown here.
Yeah. I mean, game 3, it's up in Loveland on Friday evening at your favorite time increment, 7:05 Mountain, 7:05 p.m. Mountain. And if Colorado wins game 3, there'll be game 4 on Sunday at 7:05. If they win game 4, there'll be a game 5 at 7:05 on Tuesday. So yeah, we'll see how this works out. And yeah, like I said, Colorado's going to have to make some adjustments and tool their lines a little bit, but I wouldn't be surprised if Bowers is in game 3.
I would like this series to go 5 games. And I understand, like, I don't have a rooting interest in this anymore, but I want this to go 5 games just because I want to see more from these teams. Yes. I think they've been fun to watch. And even though it's been a little bit one-sided, I think they've been entertaining games, and I want to see more of that. All right, then. I think that's it. Cece, since you happen to be here and this is our last segment, do you want to end the show?
I suppose I can do that. Sure. That'll be it for the show. Thank you for listening and or watching and or listening. Yeah, strike that, reverse it. The Calder Farmstead is part of the Full Press Radio Network. You can listen to this and several other great hockey, sports, and pro wrestling programs at fullpresscoverage.com. Just click the podcast drop-down menu in the top right portion of the website. That's the big list populating. That's that sound you just heard. And enjoy. And of course, as always, thanks for tuning in with us with all that great quality programming at Full Press Coverage and elsewhere. To spend time with us, it's an honor.
And if you guys are enjoying the Calder Farmstead, please make sure you subscribe so you get episodes in a timely fashion. Also, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Amazon, please rate and review the podcast. Or if you're watching it on YouTube, like the video, comment what you thought of the episode. Doing so helps others find the show, as podcasts with better ratings and more ratings go higher up in the listings when people search for them. And, your reviews help us improve it. You can also follow the show on social media at Calder Farmstead on Twitter and at The Calder Farmstead on Facebook and Instagram. Our social medias are all a little bit different. Not everything gets posted everywhere. Our memes go to different places, not always all 3. So you might want to check us out on all of them. Links to all of that and more can be found on our Linktree page at linktr.ee/The Calder Farmstead. Big thanks to Adrian Drake, who made our theme music. You can find him on social media at AD_dysfunction. That's AD_DYSFUNCTION. So we can make music for you too. Cece, where can the people find you?
Well, my name is Cece Hockley. You can find me representing Full Press Hockey on Twitter at FPC_AHL. Had a couple of Central Division signings from that account that I boosted out, but you can also find me on my Twitter account, my personal Twitter account at SEESEEHAWK with the @sign in front of it. Of course, that's my handle, CC Hawk. Get it? Clever, eh? Check out my writing on the Full Press Coverage Network, fullpresshockey.com. Back to Twitter real quick. Mainly hockey tweets, but yeah, music, films, pop culture, Wordle scores. If it keeps me interested, hopefully it's not going to be bullshit for you. Enough about me. Shawnee, where can the people find you?
I'm Sean O'Brien. You can find me on Twitter at Sean O'Brien81. That's SEANOBRIEN81. I'm also on Instagram at Sean O'Brien_81. You can find my stats work, including the Money Puck pie chart that goes out every morning, all of the updated game probabilities. We're going to have some new graphs up there for the playoffs coming out in the next couple, after the end of this round. All of that can be found on my Tableau page. The easiest way to find that is through a bit.ly link at bit.ly/data-dump-and-chase. All lowercase, all one word. Cece, even though you really haven't been here for that much, I'm going to let you do it. Take us home.
Thank you, Shawnee. That will do it for episode number 103 of the Calder Farmstead, an AHL podcast. Special thanks to TJ and Sarah for jumping on the program, even though I didn't get to see them. Appreciate you guys taking time out to talk Charlotte and Chicago, respectively. But for Sean O'Brien and for those two that previously appeared on the show, I'm CC Hockley. And as always, keep your stick on the ice.